Here's the thing that nobody tells you about enlightenment. You're already there, right now, this very second. The joke, the cosmic prank if you will, is that you've been spending your entire life searching for something you never lost. It's like frantically looking for your glasses while they're sitting on your face. And here's what makes this even more absurd. There's one specific illusion, one fundamental misunderstanding that, when it finally clicks, causes every other illusion to collapse like a house of cards. Not gradually, not through years of meditation or spiritual practice, just collapse. Today we're going to explore 8 illusions that keep you trapped in a reality that isn't quite real. But here's where it gets interesting. These aren't separate problems requiring 8 different solutions. They're more like different faces of the same diamond, different symptoms of the same core misunderstanding. And once you see through that core misunderstanding, everything shifts. Before we dive deeper, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Why? Because YouTube's algorithm rewards engagement, and the more you interact, the more content like this shows up in your feed. Simple as that. Now, let's talk about why everything you think you know about yourself might be backwards. Let me ask you something. Right now, as you're listening to this, where exactly are you? I don't mean your physical location. I mean you, the real you. Are you behind your eyes, looking out at the world like some tiny pilot inside a meat robot? Because that's how it feels, isn't it? There's this sense that there's a you in here, and then there's everything else out there. 2 separate things, subject and object, self and world. But what if that feeling, that absolutely convincing sensation of being a separate entity, is the master illusion, the mother of all misunderstandings? Think about this for a second. Your body is constantly exchanging matter and energy with everything around it. Every breath you take, you're literally incorporating the environment into yourself. The oxygen molecules that were in a tree yesterday are in your bloodstream today. The water you drank this morning is now part of your cells. The food you ate is being converted into your actual flesh and bones as we speak. So where does you end and not you begin? We say it's at the skin, but that's completely arbitrary. It's like drawing a circle in the ocean and saying, this water is the wave, that water is the ocean. The distinction only exists because we drew it there. The wave isn't something separate that's connected to the ocean. The wave is ocean, temporarily taking that particular form. You're not something separate that's connected to the universe. You are universe, temporarily experiencing itself from this particular perspective. Now, here's where this gets really interesting. If this sense of being separate is illusory, what else are you wrong about? Because here's the thing. Once you believe you're a separate entity, certain other beliefs become inevitable. They're not additional mistakes. They're logical consequences of that first mistake. It's like if you believe the Earth is flat, you then have to create increasingly complex explanations for why ships disappear over the horizon, why satellites work, why you can fly around the world. One false premise forces you to stack illusions on top of illusions. So let's talk about control. If you believe you're a separate self, then naturally you believe you're in control of that self, right? You're the author of your actions, the captain of your ship, the master of your fate. Except, are you? Here's a simple experiment. For the next 10 seconds, try not to think of a purple elephant. Ready? Go. What happened? The thought appeared anyway, didn't it? You didn't choose it. It arose. Now you might say, well, that's not fair. You planted it there. Okay, fine. Where did your last thought come from before I mentioned the elephant? Did you decide what to think, or did the thought just appear? And if you decided, where did that decision come from? Trace it back far enough and you hit a wall. Thoughts arise from conditions you didn't choose. Your genetics, your past experiences, your current environment, the neurochemical state of your brain right now. The awakened perspective sees that what we call I isn't the controller. It's the process itself. You're not in your body like a ghost in a machine. You are what your body is doing. The sense of being a separate controller, an ego sitting in your head pulling levers, that's a construction, a useful fiction that evolution cooked up because organisms that believe they're in control tend to try harder to survive. But it's still a fiction. Now here's the paradox, and this is crucial. When this illusion of being a separate controller dissolves, you don't become passive. You don't stop acting. Decisions still get made. Actions still happen. What changes is the sense of burden, that crushing weight of being solely responsible for everything. Think of a river. Does the river need to control its flowing? Does it stress about whether it's flowing correctly? Whether it should be flowing faster or slower? Whether it's making the right choices about which way to turn? No, it simply flows according to its nature and the landscape it encounters. When you stop trying to control everything, when you stop forcing and manipulating and gripping so tightly, things often work out better. Not because you've gained some magical power, but because you've stopped interfering with the natural intelligence of the process. You've stopped getting in your own way. And this brings us to another inevitable consequence of believing you're separate. The illusion of time as a linear path you're traveling. If you're a separate self with control, then naturally you're going somewhere, right? You're progressing from past through present toward future. You're becoming something. And this is where the suffering really ramps up, because you're perpetually dissatisfied with now. Listen to the way people talk. I'll be happy when I get the promotion. Once I find the right relationship, then I'll feel complete. After I achieve this goal, I can finally relax. It's always later, always somewhere else, always in some imaginary future that never quite arrives. Because here's what happens. You get the promotion, and for about 2 weeks, you feel great. And then the present moment is still here. And if you weren't at home in the present moment before, you won't be at home in it now either. The awakened view sees that time isn't a line you're traveling on. It's a dimension of the eternal now. Yes, events happen in sequence. Yes, there's cause and effect. But all of that is occurring within this present moment. The past exists only as memory, which you're experiencing now. The future exists only as imagination or anticipation, which you're experiencing now. The only thing that's ever actually happening is now. This isn't philosophy. This is direct observation. You've never experienced anything that wasn't now. You never will. This doesn't mean you don't plan for tomorrow or learn from yesterday. It means you recognize that planning and remembering are things you're doing now. You're not actually going anywhere. You're always here. And here is always now. There is literally nowhere else to be and no other time to be there. When this clicks, you stop postponing your life. You stop waiting for the right conditions, the perfect moment, the ideal circumstances. You see that this is it. This moment, with all its imperfections, with all its ordinariness, is the only moment you'll ever have. Not in some depressing way, but in a liberating way. You're already at the destination. You've always been at the destination. There's nowhere else to arrive. And this is when life becomes vivid, immediate, alive. Because you're no longer half present, with one foot in the past, regretting what happened, and one foot in the future, worrying about what might happen. You're fully here, fully engaged with what is actually occurring. But here's where most people stumble. Even if they understand all this intellectually, they still resist what's happening right now. They're still arguing with reality. They're still carrying around this belief that things should be different than they are. This is perhaps the most exhausting illusion of all, the idea that what's happening shouldn't be happening. Listen to your own internal dialogue for a day. This shouldn't have happened. I shouldn't feel this way. They shouldn't have done that. The world shouldn't be like this. Notice how much energy you spend resisting what already is, fighting with something that's already happened, that's already here. It's like standing in the rain, shaking your fist at the sky, insisting it shouldn't be raining. The rain doesn't care. It's already raining. Now, I'm not talking about passivity. I'm not saying you should never take action to change things. There's a huge difference between accepting what is and accepting that it must remain that way forever. You can fully accept that it's raining right now, while simultaneously deciding to build shelter. The acceptance is of the present fact, not of remaining in the rain forever. But most people don't do this. They waste enormous amounts of energy in futile resistance to what already is before they even begin to respond appropriately. The awakened person sees the futility of arguing with facts. Reality is always exactly as it is in this moment. And it couldn't be otherwise given all the conditions that led to it. This doesn't mean you like everything. It doesn't mean you don't work to change things. It means you start from acceptance rather than resistance. Here's an analogy. You're swimming in a river and you encounter a large rock. You have two choices. You can spend your energy being angry that the rock is there, insisting it shouldn't be there, mentally fighting its presence. Or you can acknowledge that it is there and swim around it. Same action, completely different relationship to reality. The awakened person swims around the rock. They don't waste energy arguing with what is. Let me ask you something. What do you think about all of this so far? Does it resonate with your own experience, or does part of you resist it? Drop a comment and let me know. I'm genuinely curious about how these ideas land with different people. Whether you've had moments where you've glimpsed this perspective, or if it all sounds like abstract philosophy. Share your thoughts below. Now, all of these illusions we've been talking about, separation, control, time, resistance, they all rely on something even more fundamental. They rely on you believing that you are your thoughts. This might be the trickiest illusion of all, because it's so deeply embedded in how we experience ourselves. The voice in your head, that constant mental chatter, that running commentary on everything, we assume that's us. We think we are the thinker. But here's something weird. If you pay close attention, you'll notice that thoughts appear in your awareness. You don't consciously create them through some act of will. They just arise. They exist for a moment. They pass away. So if you or your thoughts, who's aware of them? Who's observing the thinking? See, there has to be something prior to thought, something that's aware of thought. Otherwise, you couldn't know you're thinking. Watch your mind right now. A thought appears. You notice it. Another thought appears. You notice that one too. The noticing, the awareness, that's what you actually are. You're not the clouds passing through the sky. You're the sky itself. The sky doesn't become the clouds. It simply allows them to pass through. Thoughts are like that. They arise in the space of awareness, move through, and dissolve. The awareness remains constant. When you see this, really see it, you gain tremendous freedom. You're no longer tyrannized by your thinking. You don't have to believe every thought that pops up. You don't have to take your mental commentary as absolute truth. Some guy cuts you off in traffic, and the thought arises, what a jerk, he did that on purpose. People are so inconsiderate. That's just a thought. It appeared. You noticed it. You don't have to buy into it and spend the next 20 minutes spinning stories about how rude everyone is. This doesn't mean thinking stops. Thinking is incredibly useful. It's a tool, but you're not the tool. You're the one using the tool. And when you're not identified with your thoughts, you can use thinking when it's helpful and set it down when it's not. You're no longer compulsively thinking, trying to figure everything out, trying to mentally control your experience. The mind becomes servant rather than master. And this brings us to something that most people spend their entire lives chasing: happiness. We believe that happiness comes from external circumstances. We know this is wrong intellectually. We've all heard the studies about lottery winners returning to their baseline happiness levels, about how once basic needs are met, money doesn't increase well-being much. We know it, but we don't live as if we know it. We still believe that if we just arrange things correctly, if we get the right job, the right relationship, the right amount of money, the right living situation, then we'll be happy. We're perpetually chasing conditions, thinking happiness is somewhere out there waiting for us to find it. But here's what awakening reveals. Happiness isn't a feeling that comes from circumstances. It's your natural state when you're not disturbing yourself. Think about this. When have you been truly at peace? Not excited, not entertained, not distracted, but genuinely at peace. It's usually in moments when you weren't wanting anything else. Maybe watching a sunset, maybe completely absorbed in some activity, maybe just sitting quietly. In those moments, the wanting mind was silent. You were simply present, and that presence itself was fulfilling. This is your natural state. Happiness, peace, contentment, whatever you want to call it. It's not something you achieve or acquire. It's what remains when you stop disturbing yourself with craving and aversion, with wanting things to be different than they are. It's always been here, underneath all the agitation, all the seeking, all the struggle. You've just been too busy looking for it out there to notice it's been here all along. When you see this, you stop making happiness conditional. You stop saying, "I'll be happy when," and you recognize that you can be at peace now, regardless of circumstances. Not because you've achieved some superhuman state of detachment, but because you've stopped doing the thing that was preventing peace. You've stopped fighting with what is. Now, let's talk about meaning. We're constantly interpreting events, constantly assigning meaning to everything that happens, constantly telling ourselves stories about what things signify. And we take these interpretations to be truth. We don't realize we're making it all up. Something happens, and immediately the mind labels it. This is good, this is bad. Someone treats you a certain way, and the mind says, this means they don't respect me, or this means I'm not good enough. You fail at something, and the mind says, this means I'm a failure. These interpretations seem like simple observations of fact. They're not. They're stories. They're meanings you are imposing on events that are, in themselves, neutral. A rainy day isn't bad. That's your story about it. Losing a job isn't a disaster. That's your interpretation. Someone's behavior toward you doesn't define your worth. That's your projection. Events are just events. Circumstances are just circumstances. You're the one creating the meaning, then forgetting you did it and treating your creation as objective truth. When you wake up to this, you see that life doesn't come with built-in meaning. You're the meaning maker. And once you see that meaning is created, not discovered, you're free to create wiser meanings, to tell yourself stories that serve you rather than imprison you. Better yet, sometimes the most liberating thing is to simply not know what things mean, to let events be what they are, without immediately needing to interpret them, categorize them, fit them into your narrative. This not knowing isn't ignorance, it's wisdom. It's the recognition that reality is always richer, more complex, more mysterious than any story you tell about it. When you can rest in not knowing, you're available to what's actually happening rather than being lost in your interpretation of what's happening. And this brings us to the final illusion, the big one that keeps this whole game going. The belief that enlightenment, awakening, whatever you want to call it, is something special. Something reserved for monks and mystics. Some extraordinary achievement that transforms you into someone else, someone better, someone more spiritual. But here's the truth. Awakening isn't an achievement. It's a recognition. You're not becoming something new. You're realizing what you've always been. The very search for enlightenment is what obscures it. It's like a wave searching for the ocean, never realizing it is ocean. The journey is imaginary. The destination has always been under your feet. You are already the awareness you're seeking. You've always been whole. You've never actually been the limited, separate self you took yourself to be. That was the illusion. The real you, the awareness in which all experience arises, that's never been limited, never been in danger, never been incomplete. Enlightenment isn't extraordinary. It's utterly ordinary. It's the falling away of false beliefs about who you are. What remains isn't some cosmic consciousness with supernatural powers. It's this ordinary moment, this simple awareness. This is it. This has always been it. Now, you might be thinking, but I don't feel enlightened. I don't feel like some infinite awareness. I feel like me, with all my problems and limitations. Of course you do. These illusions are deeply conditioned. They've been reinforced your entire life by your culture, your language, your education, your experiences. They don't just vanish because you heard some ideas in a video. But here's the thing. When you see through even one of these illusions, really see through it, it begins to weaken the others. Because they all support each other. They're all aspects of the same fundamental misunderstanding. The illusion of separation supports the illusion of control, which supports the illusion of linear time, which supports resistance to what is, and so on. They're like a house of cards. Remove one and the whole structure becomes unstable. You don't need to dismantle them all at once. Just see one clearly. Question one deeply. Investigate your actual experience rather than your beliefs about your experience. Don't take my word for any of this. Look for yourself. Where is this separate self you believe you are? Can you actually find it? Or is it just an assumption you've never questioned? Where do your thoughts come from? Are you creating them, or are they arising on their own? Is happiness really dependent on circumstances? Or is it your relationship with circumstances that determines your state? These aren't rhetorical questions. They're invitations to investigate. Because awakening isn't about believing the right things. It's about seeing what's true. And you can only see that through direct observation, not through adopting new concepts. The Buddha didn't say, "Believe me." He said, "Come and see for yourself." Jesus didn't say, "Have faith in my words." He said the kingdom of heaven is within you. Look there. Not in some metaphorical sense. Actually look. Actually investigate. What you'll find is that these 8 illusions aren't enemies to be fought. They're misunderstandings to be seen through. They dissolve not through effort or struggle, but through seeing. Just like darkness doesn't require you to push it away. You simply turn on the light and darkness is gone. It was never really there. It was just the absence of light. These illusions are like that. They're not solid things that need to be destroyed. They're absences of understanding. When understanding arises, they simply aren't there anymore. This isn't a process of becoming someone new. It's a process of seeing through who you thought you were. Enlightenment isn't addition, it's subtraction. You're not gaining something, you're losing illusion. And what remains is what was always here. The simple, obvious, undeniable presence that you are and always have been. Not the small, separate self you imagined, but the whole process. The entire dance. The infinite expressing itself as this particular perspective, this particular moment, this particular life. So here's something to sit with. If everything I've said is true, if you really are already awake and just don't know it yet, then what would happen if you stopped searching? What if the very act of seeking is what keeps you from seeing what's already here? It's a paradox worth exploring. If you made it this far, drop a comment with the phrase "already home." Let's see how many of us are paying attention. And subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, because there's so much more to explore here. Another video is about to pop up on your screen. Watch it. Keep this investigation going. Don't let this be just another piece of content you consumed and forgot. Let it be the beginning of actually looking at your own experience. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.